We all have them in our lives. That one person who always has to prove others wrong. That person who, if you say the sky is blue, will insist that it's green. I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. So what do you do when you already know the discussion is going to go nowhere? What do you do when you know you're not going to change the other person's mind? One of the most valuable lessons I've learned in life is that sometimes I don't need to be right, and I don't have to attend every argument I'm invited to. Sometimes I can just be at peace without proving anything. Because the truth is, my opinion probably isn't going to change the world. And most of the time, it's not even going to change the mind of the person I'm talking to. So in some situations, I've learned that the best response is no response at all. Not because I have nothing to say, and not because my thoughts don't matter, but because protecting my peace is more important than winning an argument. Now, don't get me wrong. I do believe there are times when it's important to speak up. There are moments when conversations matter, when truth matters, and when people need to hear your perspective. I would never say that your voice isn't important, but I've also learned that not every disagreement deserves my energy. Not every opinion needs a response, and not every battle is worth fighting. Sometimes wisdom is knowing when to speak, and sometimes it means just quietly walking away. But here's something I also realize. A lot of us feel the pressure to respond to everything people say to us. Every opinion, every accusation, every misunderstanding, every comment online, every person who thinks they know us better than we know ourselves. And somewhere along the way, we started believing that silence means weakness. But I don't think that's true anymore. Sometimes silence takes more strength than speaking, because when someone challenges you, the natural reaction is to defend yourself. You want to explain, you want to correct them, you want them to understand your side of the issue. But the truth is, some people aren't listening to understand. Some people are only listening to reply. And once I began to realize that, it changed the way I handle certain conversations. I started asking myself, is this conversation actually productive? Or is this just two people trying to win? Because there is a difference. And honestly, some arguments are unwinnable from the very beginning. Not because you're wrong, but because the other person has already decided not to hear you. So now, before I respond, I try to pause and ask myself, what will this conversation produce? Will it bring understanding? Will it help the relationship? Will it solve anything? Or will it just drain my peace and leave both of us frustrated? And sometimes I realize the wisest thing I can do is simply let it go. Not every conversation deserves access to my emotions. Not every statement deserves a reaction. And I really think social media has made this even harder. We live in a time when everybody feels pressure to comment on everything. If you stay quiet, people assume you agree, disagree, or that you're afraid to speak. But maturity teaches you that you don't owe the world an explanation for every thought in your mind. Sometimes you can just scroll on by and keep your opinions to yourself. And chasing understanding from people who are committed to misunderstanding you can become emotionally exhausting. At some point, you begin to realize that your peace is more valuable than the other person's understanding. And to be perfectly clear, protecting your peace doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you have nothing meaningful to say. It doesn't make you small. Sometimes it simply means you've grown enough to recognize what deserves your energy and what doesn't. Now, obviously, there are moments when silence is wrong. If someone is being harmed, if truth needs to be spoken, if someone needs encouragement, if something important must be addressed, then yes, you should speak. Say what needs to be said. But even then, wisdom matters, because not every truth has to be delivered loudly, and not every disagreement has to become a battle. I think one of the greatest forms of maturity is learning discernment, knowing when to speak, how to speak, and when silence is actually the better choice. And honestly, I'm still working on that. I still have moments when I want the last word, when I want to defend myself, when I replay conversations in my head, wishing I had said more. But little by little, I'm learning that peace is worth protecting. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. So if you find that you can benefit from knowing when to hold your peace, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Until next time, have a blessed week and I'll see you back here again soon. God bless.